You talked about starting your fish business, fish farming. You talked about starting the fish farming. That's your business, Young Zoologist Enterprise or Enterprises, with 60 pieces of fingerlings. So how much did you start with at that time?
If I may recollect, I think it was less than probably 80,000. Yeah, I think it was less than 80,000. The tank, the fish, the feed, and then I think probably the electricity to pump water. I think I started with 80,000 back then. Yeah, that
80,000.
was in 2000 and 2003, 2004. One of my greatest lessons was when I lost over 10,000 pieces of juveniles.
Oh, how were you able to recover from that situation?
Well, life has continued, so I would say I've recovered, but it was a very, very bad experience back then. I thank goodness God that I didn't borrow money, and these are some of our challenges in the subsector. But all the money I've been able to gather over the years, both from my NYC, from friends and families that I plunged into that business, all went down the drain because it was an error from one of my tenants who mistakenly entered into my fish farm and unknowingly wanted to fetch water, not knowing that
Hello,
there was
you. Welcome to Entrepreneur's Narrative, a podcast that uses storytelling to unlock potentials, shift mindsets, and ignite growth. On this podcast, we share the stories of leading and emerging Black entrepreneurs and change makers. We learn from their successes, their journeys, their breakthroughs, and their failures.
In today's episode, we dive into the fascinating world of fish farming. We have an entrepreneur who is making waves in the agricultural sector. Beyond profits, he is also contributing to food security and employment in his community and beyond. Join me as we make welcome Kolarele Odekanyin. You are welcome, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
It's a pleasure to have you as well.
I'm so glad to be back on campus after almost 15 years.
Oh, amazing. So tell us a bit about yourself. Tell us about the schools you attended. Tell us about your primary education, secondary education, as well as your university education.
All right, like I just mentioned, interestingly, I had all my schooling around Akokaye. I had my primary education at Akoka Primary School, just at the University of Lagos main gate. Afterwards, I proceeded to College of Education, Technical, also within Akokaye. Then I came back to University of Lagos for my first degree in zoology. Then afterwards, I came back again for my master's degree in natural resources conservation. That was in 2010. So that's been my journey, academic journey so far, and also other professional courses from African Leadership Foundation, ALF in Abeokuta, also Faith Foundation, where I also went for a course on entrepreneurship. And that has been my academic journey so far.
Oh, that's really amazing. Like to have all your education within Akoka. Can you just tell us something really, can you tell us something about your childhood that still interests you, or something that you can, you always look for, a memory you look forward to, your childhood memory?
Indeed, that is awesome. I wasn't expecting this kind of a question. But the truth of the matter is that sometimes our journey actually divinely ordained. I could remember back in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken, right on Millionaire campus, my father used to do drinks trading, that is the soft drinks. And at that very tender age, I've joined him to market soft drinks to the sports center. So when I see students coming around to do sport and they're thirsty, they call on me. And I was in my primary school then, and with all the excitement, I rushed down there, try to sell, make money. Then getting back home, we have fruits all around University of Lagos. I plucked some of them, and the following morning, I take the fresh ones back to school, and I just introduced them to my students, my friends, and teachers, and amazingly, they buy them. And I never knew that I was still going to become an entrepreneur in the future. I was just doing this for fun back then. And anytime I remember, I flashback that. So, Kola, you've been into this journey for this while. It always makes me laugh, and I'm so grateful to God that I'm still in that space today. And that has been my journey as a child, back then.
So you would say that family, you kind of family you came from is actually what birthed the entrepreneurial spirit in you.
Exactly. My father was a staff of the University of Lagos, but yet he has to had other means of income to his mega salary back then. By the time he goes to work, he leaves us with those stuffs to sell. And we find it very interesting. It wasn't as if we were being punished or whatsoever. So I would say it's been thing that over within the family. And today, I'm glad that we sustain that spirit of entrepreneurship.
Amazing. So how did your journey into fish farming begin? Was it actually yes, you are a passionate person when it comes to entrepreneurship. Is something that was birthed in you, or right from childhood. But would you say, because you were selling fruits back then and then sports drinks, and being an entrepreneur now, it's isn't what you were into back then, that it's not that same line of business that you are into. So for the current line of business you are into, which is fish farming, what would you say birthed this idea? Or what was it? The passion? Was it circumstances of life? Was it opportunities? Or you just had to do something? What exactly brought about the idea?
I think it's a combination of all that you have just mentioned. And interestingly, while in secondary school, I was in the science class. That was St. Timber's College. I think I forgot to make mention of that. That was my alma mater. Of variance, I'll give that to my alma mater. Afterwards, I gained admission into College of Education to study electrical electronics. When I left in my undergrad level, I actually wanted to study medicine. That was my passion. My dad had an accident back then when I was very little, and it was a very tough moment for the family. And I think I just told myself then that I was going to study medicine and ensure that I take care of my family, because I knew what we went through, rushing in from one hospital to the other. So I had the mind of becoming a medical doctor. But when I gained the admission to College of Medicine, to College of Education, there was no medicine. What they had then were basically science courses like biology and I think integrated science. So my score then afforded me a course in electrical electronics. So, but in my undergrad level then, I wrote JAM all over again, and I got a score that got me admission into University of Lagos. So I got admitted as a medical student, medicine and surgery. That was back then in 1998. But unfortunately, and as I said, it's a combination of what you just mentioned. As Unilag is designed, in your undergrad level, all science students sit in Unilag. That is the Akoka campus. And I think in your 200 level, which is called Part 1, you move to Idiaraba. I didn't do well. I was struggling with most of my courses back then. And you were only given an option. It's either you retake one sitting or you just allow them to choose another course for you. I didn't think about it twice. So I was offered zoology and I gladly took it, not knowing what the future asked for me. So I came back to Akoka campus and I started with my zoology course. Years after, that was after 400 level, we all graduated. 2 years down the line, my particular set were not called for the NYSC program. Other departments were listed, but my own particular department was not listed for almost 2 years. So within that 2 years, I was just juggling one job to the other. When you go to a company, tender your CV, tender your application, they will tell you, oh, the kind of job you're applying for, you've not gone to serve. So you need your NYSC certificate. And I'm like, so because of this NYSC certificate, I could not get some of those collar jobs like we claimed back then. So I told myself, what else can I do? I studied zoology. What else can I make out of zoology? So I felt I could go into aquaculture. So I didn't lean on the theory that we were only taught in school or in class then. So I had to go for a 2 days training on aquaculture, that is fingerlings production. So I went there, that was at Dynamo, if I can still remember very well. So I learned how to produce fingerlings and the feeds. So my dad sponsored me then. He believed so much in my vision. He wanted me to do something for myself while awaiting my NYC. So that was how I just started the fish farming, with just 60 pieces in just a small container. And when I made my first harvest, it was encouraging. The fish came out well. And while I was doing this, I kept on going online to make more research on fish farming in Africa, in Nigeria. I stumbled at another multinational company. I don't know if I'm permitted to make mention of the name.
Oh, definitely you
Okay,
are.
thank you. So it's called Dizengoff West Africa. They have their headquarters in Israel. So when I stumbled at them, they brought in first fish feed into the country, but it was not yet known then. They brought in their Dizengoff. The most popular feed then was Copens. So when they brought in their own Dizengoff feed, it wasn't that popular. So when I saw it, I developed the interest that this is the feed that I will need for my fish as well. So let me test we call it food conversion ratio, FCR. Let me test the food conversion ratio against the coupons and see which one is best. I bought a bag, and by the time I tested it, within a space of 1 month, I could see a sharp, better result from the coupons. So I wrote them, and I said I want to come and be buying the feed from them. Just to cut the whole story short, eventually I became a staff of Dizengoff when I promised them that I can market their fish feed. And they gave me a test that if I can do a ton within a space of 1 week, then it becomes a deal. And I said, I'm not looking for a permanent job. I'm just looking for a freelancing job. And by the grace of God, I was able to market a container within a month. So, and they gave me the offer of a sales rep in their company back then. So I think within the space of 1 year plus or thereabout, we were called for NYC. So I had to leave the job and went for my NYC.
You talked about starting your fish business, fish farming. You talked about starting the fish farming. That's your business, Young Zoologist Enterprise or Enterprises, with 60 pieces of fingerlings. So how much did you start with at that time?
If I may recollect, I think it was less than probably 80,000. Yeah, I think it was less than 80,000. The tank, the fish, the feed, and then I think probably the electricity to pump water. I think I started with 80,000 back then.
80,000.
Yeah, that was in 2003, 2004. Yes, 2003, 2004, with just 80,000.
So if someone is to start a similar business in the year 2025, how much will it cost the person? From the way you're smiling, I can tell, what you're about to say.
Exactly.
So how much will it cost the person?
Like we normally grade it, if you're starting with 1,000 pieces of a juvenile, you'll be spending nothing less than 2 million to raise them to a 1 kg size.
Okay.
A bag of a feed of 15 kg goes for nothing less than 33,000 now. So you can just multiply that with 1,000 pieces of a juvenile, excluding the cost of purchasing the juvenile.
So when you say juvenile, is that like the smallest?
No. That is like the middle age size of that baby fish.
And how long will that take to get to its maturity stage?
From the fry stage to the juvenile stage takes 8 weeks, between 7 to 8 weeks if you want a jumbo size. But between that juvenile stage to maturity stage, 4.5, 5 months, depending on the food conversion ratio of your fish and other management.
So that will cost about 2 million plus.
Definitely.
So are you saying a common man, like a young man who has a vision to start a fish farming business cannot go into that based on the capital he or she needs, for the business?
Hypothetically, yes. Yes. But I started small, so they can as well start small. They don't need to start at that scale of 1,000 pieces. They could start with 100, they could start with 50, just to test the water, test the business, see if it's something worth going into, not necessarily to have that huge sum of amount of money.
Okay. So what's the biggest lesson you have learned so far in this business?
Wow. How do I start, or where do I start from? There's so many things to actually talk about in this at this point. I've learned that you must actually get your market before delving into it. And I think I just want to stress on that. If you don't have your demand and you go into aquaculture, you are already failed. You have already failed from the start. Because we're talking about a live animal here. This is a kind of business that only demands till you harvest. The fish doesn't want to know if you have money kept somewhere. For the space of that 4 to 5 months, they have to be fed. And that means that you must have made provision for their feeds. So meaning that if at the point of harvest, you did not have the market for it, you have to continue to feed. And that means that you will probably be eating into your profit. You would have feed beyond your budget to raise them to that 1 kg size. So by the time customers are not coming to buy them off, you will have to continue to feed them. And I think one of my greatest lessons was when I lost over 10,000 pieces of juveniles.
Oh, how were you able to recover from that situation?
Well, life has continued, so I would say I've recovered, but it was a very, very bad experience back then. I thank goodness God that I didn't borrow money, and these are some of our challenges in the subsector. But all the money I've been able to gather over the years, both from my NYC, from friends and families that I plunged into that business, all went down the drain because it was an error from one of my tenants who mistakenly entered into my fish farm and unknowingly wanted to fetch water, not knowing that there was a PVC gun that I used to mend my pipe that I kept somewhere. So while she was fetching the water, she never knew that the PVC gum had fell into the pond. And then before we knew it, the gum glued all their mouth, their fins. And I was still working as well. I was doing my freelancing job with this Engulf. By the time I came back, I saw my fish hanging, floating. The whole water has turned white. I was wondering what happened. Before I could need the container was actually underneath the water. So I didn't notice on time until I flushed off all the water before I now saw that was the cause. So it was a very terrible moment back then.
So how did you handle the situation?
Yes, I had to barricade my farm. I make sure that once I'm not around, then I was also a one-man business. My sister was helping me. My dad too, once in a while. I think then he has retired. So he also monitored the farm on my behalf anytime I go out. So, but I make sure that there was not a gate. The little I've been able to recoup over the years, I used them to fence the farm. The farm was exposed initially. So, but by the time that incident happened, I had to fence the farm, then gated the farm. And I think that just beefed up the security a bit.
Okay. So over the years, what are the challenges you have faced or are still facing in the business?
For every farmer, one thing is very sure, the market. Find the local market, like I always tell my colleagues, we've not even tapped into the local market yet. But this is a subsector that is highly competitive. If you don't want to go for catfish, you can go for tilapia. You can go for mackerel. You can go for all kind of frozen fish. So many people have choices of what kind of fish they eat. So for those of us in the aquaculture, we are limited because the kind of feed we give them are floating feeds basically. because those ones do well. The fish can easily pick them up. But these feeds were imported. Unlike now that we have local manufacturers that are now locally producing their own floating feeds. But the cost of production locally is also high. I mean, it will shock you to realize that local floating feeds are even more expensive than the imported foreign feeds. So that is a big challenge for those of us that are into the farming. So because for us to even go into local production of other feeds, we need the raw materials. And because of climate change, some of these raw materials are actually not giving us the best output of nutritional value that our fish will need. You can also not attest. When I was starting, I told you about what we call food conversion ratio.
Yes.
For the local sinking feeds, you can actually, well, I wouldn't know if technology has been able to help some other colleague farmers to be able to determine the food conversion ratio of a locally made sinking feed. You discover that you cannot determine the food conversion ratio of a local feed. So when you are supposed to feed your fish within the space of 4 to 5 months and they are matured with the floating feeds, you have to use close to 8 months for the local sinking feeds. So this is a big challenge for you that wants to quickly rear your fish within the space of 4 months, make your turnover, restock again, and do like 2 cycles in a year or to 3 cycles. You are probably doing 1 cycle in a year. That is a big challenge. Presently, again, for those of us that were using a backyard farming, a concrete or mobile kind of tank, were on estimated billing. Fishes lives in water. So when you put your fish in a tank, you need to change the water regularly to give them clean water. This water is gotten from a borehole, which needs to be pumped into the ponds. Now we are on a prepaid meter that is going as high as 226 naira per unit. You can imagine if you have close to 20 ponds, that takes nothing less than maybe 5,000 liters of water, and you have about 20 of that. If you could quickly do the arithmetic, do you know how much
that will cost?
That will cost. And these are big challenges that we're facing in the subsector. Also, the market purchasing power has drastically dropped. Fishes that when I started were selling it at 350 naira per kg. It's going for close to 3,500, 4,000, 5,000 naira now.
Per kg?
Per kg.
Oh.
So the question is, how many Nigerians can afford to buy a kg of fish for 3,500, 4,500, depending on the size? I can still remember vividly, if I'm permitted to also mention one of the eatery in my area that used to buy from me 200 pieces of smoked catfish every three days. Today, they are no longer into that. They are probably into snail, not even plantain. So, and that is to tell us how bad the economy has affected those of us that were in the agri sector. And that is a very big challenge that we're facing right now. We need to pay our staffs. Minimum wage, we say that you should pay your staff, I think 70,000 if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Where do you get the 70,000 naira from? As a one-man business. And these are also graduates. Some of them, by the time they look at the pay they are going on with at the end of the month, they stylishly just tell you, sir, I want to travel. And that's the end. Because the money is not also sustaining them. So a myriad of challenges that we're facing as farmers. We can only hope and trust God that our government will inject better funding that also works with farming perfectly, not the kind of funding that the government is releasing whereby we'll be asked to pay loan and a loan of more than a single digit. Where do they expect us to pay back? And these are also business that you cannot sell on a monthly basis. They have a period of gestation. So when you are now asking me to be repaying my loan every month, when I'm not harvesting every month, how do I pay back? So you can see that there are numerous challenges, that I can, if I had to continue to mention the list, it's endless.
Okay. Having listened to these challenges, you talked about production of locally made feed. What do you think the government can actually do to ensure that that aspect is being looked into?
Yeah, the first thing I think is very crucial is insecurity. One of our major condiments or raw materials we use for the locally made fish feed is the maize. And you agree with me that this is largely coming from the northern part of the country. And the northern part of the country is extremely being insecure. Farmers are being chased away from their farms. Trucks that are bringing this kind of raw materials down to the south, bandits will also, invade their movement. And I think the first thing is for this government to look into the security architecture of the country. If this is well taken care of, I still want to believe that that could help to a large extent. Also, um, the machines that we use, some of these machines, locally fabricated ones, by the time you ask a welder, because I've made one myself, to give you a cost of making a smoking kiln, by the time he give you the cost of the raw materials, it will tell you that some of these irons that they are using is being gotten from China, is being gotten from Taiwan.
When we have some of those things here in Nigeria.
I'm not in that field, but I can tell you for a fact that if you go to a place like Owode Oniri, ask them, they will tell you that some of these things are imported. They are imported. So by the time they import it, the import duty on it alone is killing. So by the time you also want to fabricate your own locally made machines, you look at the cost of putting that or setting that up. So the government needs to really come in. The investors also needs to come in to support young agripreneurs, for us to be able to also meet the food security that all of us are advocating for.
You said when you started we started as a one-man business. You started by test running. That's with 80,000 naira, yes, and you bought about 60 pieces of fish, yes. So when you started employing people, how many staff did you start with?
Yeah, like I said, I started with my sister and my dad when I first started with the 60 pieces. So, but the next batch I stopped then, if I can remember, I think I went as high as 500. I may not be very accurate right now. I think I went to like 500. I just wanted to tell myself that you did the first one, you got it right. So scale up. When I restock, I started with 500 this time around. So I employed 2 staffs to join me then, because like I said, I was working. I needed people that will help me manage the farm. So I got a professional who was also into, I would call it freelancing. What it does is that it just helps to manage farm
For different people.
So
Okay.
I met him while I was also promoting Dizengo Fix then. So while I ran a seminar back then, I was part of the seminar. And then when we finished, they approached me, wanted my business card back then. So when he told me that, sir, I'm a freelancer, I move from one farm to the other, can you employ me? And I said, fine. If you think you can work with me, then it's a deal. So he was the first person I employed. Then another young fellow who does a carpentry job in my neighborhood, he was also not getting a job. So I co-opted him too. So those are the 2 that were helping me then, because I was also consulting. So when customer calls me to come and manage the farm, I need somebody back at home to manage my own farm. So because of that scaling to 500, I needed more hands to support me. So those were the 2 set of staffs that I employed back then.
Okay, so currently how many staff do you work with?
Yeah, I have 4 full staff now, then 3 part-time.
You talked about having 7 staff at the moment, and you also talked about poor patronage, because you said the economy is bad and the number of customers you had before, you no longer have as much now. So what would you say is the most challenging for you, management of staff or customers?
I think I would rather go with the customers because, of course, customer retention is key. But in this case now, it's not a matter of customers being disloyal. It's
Okay.
about customers' purchasing power.
Okay.
So when they can no longer afford what they were buying before, obviously it will drop our own production output too. I used to have people that order for my fish, smoked fish, in the United States of America, then Florida. In the last 8 months, they've not ordered for once.
Oh.
So that is to tell us the extent at which the economy has really affected almost everyone. And that as well has also reduced my own stocking density capacity, because when people are not really ordering the way they used to, I also have to reduce the quantity of fish I'm stocking, because the more I stock, the more feed I expend. And if I'm not getting sales, it will backfire, it will affect me. So for my staff, the good thing is, thank God for Tony Elumelu Foundation, and I've told myself that any fora I find myself, I will always refer to the foundation, because if not for the seed funding the foundation gave, I would not have been able to continue in fish farming today. Like I said, I don't even need to rear my own fish this day. All I do is off-take from colleagues farmers. And that has also helped me to retain my own staff. Because if it has to go by my own farm capacity, then it doesn't worth it to retain them. But because I now have my own smoking kiln, where I now smoke my own fish, even though the orders too is a bit smaller to what we used to sell back then. But at least they have things to still do on the farm. And we have also diversified. So we are not also staying in fish farming alone. We have also added other field of businesses to our business. So my old staffs are still managing those things. So for their loyalty, staying with me all through the trying times, I retained them, and they are not really being bothered about the pay. The pay is still very small, no doubt about that. But the vision of Young Zoologist Enterprise is not actually to have a permanent staff, is to empower my staff. So virtually all of them are also doing one thing or the other today to make ends meet, aside of what they are still getting from Young Zoologist Enterprises.
Oh, okay. You talked about some other businesses that young zoologist enterprises is have started doing. So can you talk a little bit more on that?
Yeah, Young Zoologist Enterprises Best Agri-World Foundation is supposed to be an academy where students can come around, learn about businesses generally, but majorly agribusiness. But today, the foundation transformed into a cooperative instead of an academy, whereby people that want to go into other areas of farming, like crop farming, poultry farming, can as well start up such farming. So what I do now is that once you join my cooperative, you show me your interest. Is it poultry farming? That is where I have my own expertise. Is it poultry or crop farming? And if I say crop farming, I major in ugu farming as well. That is pumpkin. So once any of those two are your own area of interest, then you can come into my cooperative. So we do what we call thrift. So we save money and we use that money to help one another in our various fields of businesses. So those are the other lines of businesses I do. We also have the food vendors, people that are into food, you would like call it food production, or what do they really call them?
You said
People
food.
that sells food.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yes.
some of
Yeah.
them don't really have the money, to go to the market and buy enough. So one of the things I do in Young Zoologist Enterprises that is under that Agri-World Foundation is to sponsor some of those things. Like you want to buy plantain, instead of you buying your plantain in bits, we come together, we buy the plantain. Those who are into plantain, either frying of plantain or roasting of plantain, we distribute it to them. If you're into beans, it's also more or less like a hub, where we fund the purchasing. So yes, yeah, we just like a thrift contribution. So we gather the money together, we buy some of these food stores, then we share it among some of these women. So it's like a women empowerment program as well. So these are other stores I do beside the main fish farm.
What's your most proud moments, as a fish farmer? What's that one thing you remember? What's that one thing you remember as a fish farmer, and you say, "Oh, I'm so proud of myself."
Yeah, like I said, which time did not permit me. Young zoologist actually focuses on three main core areas. That is youth and women empowerment, training, then I think consultancy. So one of my greatest moments is seeing those who have been part of young zoologist enterprises starting their own businesses to today. And that always gives me joy. Like I said, I had over 30 members that joined agro cooperative, and close to about 12 or thereabout of them have started their own farming today, and they are still doing well. And some of them have also started exportation of the different kind of farming they are doing. And anytime I see this, I'm very, very glad that I've been able to do this in my own little way, to showcase the little potential that I have to make sure that young generations embrace farming. And also I see students coming to my farm for excursion. It's also an happy moment when I see students coming into my farm just for excursion to learn about farming. And this has been a joyful moment for me. And I'm so grateful to God.
How do you handle difficult moments or situations like downtimes, like when you are, when you've had difficult times or moments, like what keeps you motivated?
It will, no, it will be awkward to say that no matter how that tough time comes, I don't give up. I don't give up, and that's why I've stayed this far by the grace of God. Financially, of course, those moments will always come, but I will always create a solution around it. For every problems that comes my way, such problems are stepping stone to another solution. So by the grace of God, I've never seen a moment that will pull me down. Rather, those moments rather give birth to a new idea, and that has always been my uh, own mantra. That when those tough times comes, the tough will always get going.
Can you describe your entrepreneurial journey in 3 words?
Um, I've been resilient, I've been focused, I'm determined. And this has been my mantra, like I said earlier, keeps me going. Irrespective of the storm, these three things have always helped me to continue with the journey.
Okay. Can someone be a millionaire by being a fish farmer?
Absolutely, yes. I told you that one of my greatest moments that nearly wrecked me was when I lost my juveniles. Uh, there are different niche or niches in catfish farming. The money spinning aspect of it is the fingerlings production, where you bring a male and a female broodstock together, and then you do artificial insemination, and then in less than 24 hours, the eggs turns to what we call fries. So that are the first stages of the baby fishes. Now, you cannot account the numbers of fries that may come out from at least a 20 gram of eggs that you fertilized. Now, let's just assume that you had 30,000 fries that fertilized, plus or minus about 20,000 of them survived to fingerlings. If one of them is sold for, let me use a very easy number, 100 naira per one. 100 naira times 20,000. How much would that give us? If I'm not mistaken, close to 200,000, if I'm not mistaken, or if not 2 million. I think a lot of people do not believe it until they actually experience it. If you are able to do a successful production, and I would like to point it out as well, that not all farmers that eventually produce and got fingerlings and juveniles actually did it once. And that is the myth behind it. A lot of people will just see fingerlings on video, YouTube, and they think that is how easy it was. Some farmers could have used like 5 broodstocks before they could have that success production. So, but by and large, if God answers your prayer, you are able to do a successful production with just 2 male broodstock, 1 female broodstock. You can turn a millionaire.
So for those who don't do hatching, that's what it's
Yeah,
called,
that's what
right?
it's called. Yeah.
Okay, for those who do not do that, and they are just into sale of like
Rearing?
yes, rearing of fish, can is the millionaire aspect still achievable, realizable?
Yeah, that is determined based on their stocking density. Like I said, you got to also quickly do the arithmetic. How much fish will I stock to give me that a million naira worth of value? If we're taking an example of a 3,500 per kg of fish, so we are assuming that for all the fishes that you stocked, at the end of 4 to 5 months, you're able to have 1,000 kg. That is the minimum your 1,000 fishes weighed. Then we just multiply 3,500 by the 1,000, and that gives you 3.5 million. But obviously, you have to remove the cost of feed. You have to remove the cost of labor and other
Casualty to
other operational expenses will definitely be there. So I can say possibly within 2 cycles or at most 3 cycles, you should be able to break even. I've seen a lot of articles that will say in your first cycle, you can break even. I've always told myself, I'm not going to argue with anybody. This is a practical business. You go into it, then at the end of 4 5 months, you'll be able to attest to yourself that indeed this thing can turn me to a millionaire, or they're just lying. It boils down to your management, it boils down to your market. When you go to the locations like Lekki, what we're selling on the mainland for 3.5 could go as high as 6,000 in such places. So you can see the difference in market pricing too. So I think, to just answer your question, it's a millionaire business, and then one can actually turn a millionaire if you get it right.
So let's take it a step further. Can a fish farmer become a billionaire in Nigeria?
You really want me to laugh? I've been in this industry for 2 decades. I've not turned billionaire. It's also a function of your capacity. We have the likes of Obasanjo farms. You can't compare what these people are doing with what people like us are doing. So if one must turn billionaire, it's just a function of how large is your farm. So I want to believe that yes, you can turn a billionaire if you have the capital, you go into intensive farming, possibly. But I think for people like us, we're still juggling between millionaires. Yeah, a millionaire is not small money as well.
Also, I like the fact that you said that with so much confidence, like you are a millionaire fish farmer. Because a lot of people out there think going into agriculture means I don't want to do something dirty, I don't want to do something that's not lucrative or productive. But hearing this from you that you are a millionaire fish farmer and someone can become a millionaire, by fish farming. I think this will really help a lot of people who want to go into this line of business.
Absolutely.
And change their mindset to know that it's actually something lucrative.
Definitely.
Depending on how well you strategize, depending on the strategies you make use of.
Definitely.
Tell us the first time you had a major breakthrough that made you know that it is young zoologist enterprises or nothing. Like that made you so sure that yes, this is the right business for you. Just tell us about the moment.
Yeah, I know the list of that, but the major one, like I said, I think I would just want to mention 2. The first one was the E3 that started buying for me 200 pieces every other day. Sorry, every other day. When I supply them on a Monday, by Wednesday, they are due for another supply. And their minimum was 200 pieces then. So
sorry, what year?
That should be in 2017. Yeah, 2017, if I'm not mistaken now. 2017.
And that was like how many years into you started 2016?
Yeah, I started in 2016.
So your major breakthrough was in 2017?
Yeah, in 2017, yeah. because when I got the funding in 2016, I was able to do a smoking king.
Okay, the funding
From Tony Elumelu Foundation, yeah, and that was just the hallmark for me because, like we said, rearing takes 4 to 5 months, but in processing, I can actually outsource my live fishes and just put them into the oven, and there is a large demand for that. And the second one was when I got a call from Florida that they would like to also be buying from me. So those were the two peak period that I had a fantastic moment.
Talking about getting a call from Florida, we are in a digital age, and a lot of people believe that social media is usually leveraged, to get customers to make sales. And I want to know if you have a strong online presence and if you have keyed into that. And if you do not have a strong online presence, how are you able to still get so much sales?
Really, like I believe as a farmer, I work almost 24 hours, especially when you are into archery. Your first 24 hours needs in and outflow of water. So this alone does not really give us time to be online or on social media. But I actually leveraged on social media one time like that I got someone to manage a website for me to showcase our products and services. But after 1 year, I discovered that the website wasn't actually generating revenue. And as an entrepreneur, we are called to be diligent. So every penny that is spent is accounted for. So once I realized that a particular facility is not yielding dividends for me, I put it on hold. But of course, I leverage on the LinkedIn, WhatsApp most especially, then Facebook. But of course, they are not that heavy kind of a platform that I use. Nigeria is a blessed country. I've always said this time without number that we have not even met our local demands. So when people are saying that you need the online presence to go far or for people to know you, fine. I'm not disputing that. But within my locality alone, I've not been able to meet the supply of my locality or the demand supply of my locality. So if I had to shoot myself online and there is now a huge demand, the question would be, do I have the resources to meet that demand? And once you fail a particular demand, you have lost that customer. Of course, I look forward to a time whereby I will have online presence. It's also a work in progress, but we're just building our legacy with time, trusting God that as time passes, we'll be scaling our businesses. And when the time of converting fully to online presence comes, we will be there by the grace of God.
Okay. So talking about the resources, you made mention of the fact that you do not have the resources to upscale or to expand. So what would you have to say to an investor to convince him or her that fish farming is worth investing in?
We are in the agri sector. Among the three needs of humans, food equally ranks third. There is no single day that humans will not want to eat. So we believe that this is an industry that should be well funded. This is an industry that investors, both local and international, should actually support so that I can't remember the last time I was reading a news talking about malnutrition and rest. Like, we will definitely have it when there is lack of food production. So I believe that if our foreign local investors, the government can inject better funding into the agricultural space, it's not a money that will go down the drain, because this is what people will definitely be demanding for on a daily basis. And as long as the money is there, we can guarantee them of the production and we can guarantee Nigerians of a better feeding.
What advice do you give to a young person who wants to go into fish farming but has little or no capital?
Number one, search for young zoologist enterprises or agro-wealth. We have a platform, and one of the focus of young zoologist enterprise to give a platform for such set of Nigerian youths. I'm privileged to become a farmer today because my father owns a land. And many times I reminisce on this. I would tell myself that if he had not gotten a land, would it have been possible for me to as well have started farming? So I think I leveraged on what he had then. So he had a small tank, he had a backyard. And I told myself, Dad, this backyard is just here and this tank is just lying fallow. And I studied zoology. Let me convert what I studied in school into something that can start yielding money. So if you're out there watching this podcast today or listening to this podcast, and you think you are limited by land, by facility, by capital, by experience, call my number. We will give you a platform to get trained and acquire the necessary skill that you need to be successful in fish farming. And I can also guarantee you that in the next 6 months, you also be a testimony, in this subsector.
Wow, I like that. So just tell us your key values, like your two key values.
Honesty. I don't joke with my integrity. I have few investors that knew me from nowhere. Some of them got to know me online. Members of my cooperative knew me. Honesty. Whatsoever we request for, we make sure that we utilize the funding for exact purpose that we requested for it. And also, I'm very, very resilient. I work around the clock to ensure that our business never dies. We work around the clock to ensure that our investors' money, our money also do not go down the drain. And we also ensure that we keep on producing what we are pledged to do in terms of food security for the nation and Africa at large.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kolarele Odekanyin.
It's a pleasure.
I'm happy I pronounced your name correctly.
Very correctly this time
We are
around.
so honored to have you.
It's a pleasure.
You have heard that.
You have heard from Mr. Kolarele, a fish farmer in Lagos, who goes beyond profit making to ensure that he creates employment and also promotes food security. He also made mention of the fact that fish farming is a lucrative business. So if you are looking forward to go into fish farming, you can be a millionaire from being a fish farmer. Thank you very much for watching. If you found this video impactful, useful, and insightful, please subscribe to this channel, like this video, share, and leave a comment in the comment section. Bye.